Before diving into this story, hit that like button, drop a comment below, and subscribe, because here, every story is a new emotion you won't want to miss. What if the words you write were your only link to the world? What if, even in silence, you could reach a lost soul? This is the story of Lucia and Raphael, two strangers who found each other in the most unexpected place, between the pages of silence. The camera follows Lucia in a medium shot as she walks through the downtown streets, surrounded by urban chaos, honking, conversations, traffic noise. But all we hear is a muffled sound, almost like we're underwater. The world is loud, but for her, silence reigns. The colors are cold and subtle, with a faint grayish filter that reflects her emotional state. She avoids rushing people, always watching, always silent. Lucia clutches her notebook tightly, as if it were her voice in the world. Sometimes she discreetly watches people's lips, trying to decipher conversations through lip reading. There's a sense of distance, as if she's present, yet invisible. The camera lingers on her eyes deep, observant, curious, but lonely. She crosses the street and pauses in front of a store window, where a couple smiles and gestures animatedly. Her reflection appears in the glass, and for a second, she smiles too. But the smile quickly fades, and she keeps walking, retreating into her inner world. This is Lucia, someone who observes more than she speaks, feels more than she shows, and writes what she cannot say. The city, full of sounds, is merely the backdrop to her silent and profound universe. As the narrator's voice enters, soft and reflective, we see Lucia arrive home, a small apartment filled with books, framed quotes, and newspaper clippings. She sits in front of an old typewriter, where her words become a bridge to the world. The sound of the keys fills the silence like a private symphony. Lucia types with intensity, her eyes fixed on the blank page that quickly becomes an entire universe. She learned early that silence can be deafening, but written words, they scream. Lucia finishes a paragraph and smiles with pride. She places the paper next to several other manuscripts, all signed under the same pseudonym, Clara Astul. No one knows her real identity. This way, she feels safe, protected from rejection and judgment. Words are her allies, her armor, and her cry for freedom. The camera glides through the apartment, a packed bookshelf, handwritten quotes on the wall, a frame with the words, "Silence also speaks." The soundtrack is gentle and melancholic. Everything reveals who she is without a single spoken word. The audience begins to understand that Lucia holds a rich world inside her, one that few truly know. And it's in this contrast between silence and expression that her strength begins to shine. In the bathroom mirror, Lucia stares at her reflection. She tries to smile, but soon looks away, as if not fully recognizing herself. In her mind, the fear of rejection echoes. She remembers being underestimated, treated as the girl who needs help, instead of the brilliant and sensitive woman she is. That is why her books carry different names, so people will love her before knowing who she is. On her computer screen, we see a message from a publisher interested in turning her books into a film. Her heart races, but panic sets in too. What if they find out who I am? Will they see me differently? She hesitates, closes the laptop, and lies down, hugging a pillow tightly. Success, which should bring joy, feels like a threat to her quiet refuge. She feels like someone who built a castle out of paper, beautiful but fragile. But there alone, Lucia mouths silent words to herself. Maybe one day, someone will see beyond the silence. Someone who will read her soul, not just her words. That faint hope is what keeps her writing. Her novels are always about unlikely encounters, about hearts that understand each other across different worlds. Deep down, she writes what she longs to live. One late afternoon, Lucia goes to the nearby park. She sits on a bench with her notebook on her lap and watches life unfold. A couple plays with a dog, another embraces under a blooming tree. Everything seems so easy, so natural for others. Lucia tries to write but feels distracted, touched by a wave of emptiness. She closes the notebook and watches the smiles and gestures she cannot hear. She imagines what they're saying, invents conversations in her mind. Did he say he loves her? Did she tell a funny secret? The world of hearing people is a constant mystery. Even though she's learned to read expressions and lips, it's never quite enough. There's an invisible barrier between her and the world. In that moment, everything feels heavy. The city, the silence, the love she never had. But then, a child walks up to her and hands her a flower that had fallen to the ground. Lucia smiles, touches her heart in gratitude. The child says nothing, just smiles back. In that simple gesture, Lucia is reminded there are many ways to communicate, and not all require sound. She places the flower inside her notebook, closes her eyes for a moment, and takes a deep breath. Maybe, even in silence, there's still room for real connection. It's a rainy afternoon. Lucia enters her usual cafe, ordering her coffee by writing it down, as always. She sits near the window, where she can observe the world and scribble ideas. At a nearby table, a distracted young man drops his belongings, papers, pencils, and a black notebook filled with drawings fall near her feet. Lucia bends down to help, and as she picks up the notebook, her eyes fix on the illustrations. They depict scenes that look like they were pulled straight from her own writings. Raphael, the young man, thanks her in a rush, unaware of the connection. But Lucia can't hide her surprise. She flips through a few more pages and finds an illustration that perfectly matches a scene from her latest book published under her pseudonym. Coincidence? Fate? Could he be a secret reader? She returns the notebook, discreetly pointing at the image, and he smiles, half shy, half proud. A simple smile, yet one that seems to light up the gray afternoon. Even without words, something begins to take shape. Raphael realizes she's deaf and, without hesitation, grabs a napkin and writes, "Do you know this story?" She nods and smiles for the first time in days. The silence between them isn't uncomfortable. It's almost poetic. A silence that welcomes, not excludes. The connection is made without knowing. He illustrates her soul. Without knowing, she writes his. They keep meeting without planning to, as if the universe is playing matchmaker between two lost halves. One day, Raphael proudly shows his portfolio. He speaks with his hands and his eyes, though he doesn't know sign language. He points to an illustration of a couple standing at a cliff's edge and writes in his notebook, this one as from the author Clara Ustel. Ever heard of her? I'm obsessed with her books. Lucia freezes inside. He loves her soul without knowing it's hers. Lucia holds back a laugh and simply replies, yes, I've heard of her. Her heart pounds. She wants to tell him, to reveal herself, but something stops her. The fear of disappointment, or worse, for fear of being seen with pity. Raphael keeps talking about how Clara Osul understands human feelings like no one else. How her stories make him feel less alone. Little does he know, he's speaking right in front of the author herself, made of flesh, bone, and silence. Each of his words is like a sharp arrow to Lucia's heart, not from pain, but recognition. For the first time, someone speaks of her as if she were special, without even knowing who she is. Raphael describes her writing with such admiration that she nearly cries, but she holds it in, because right there in that moment, she discovers something deep. He loves her essence, even without knowing her name, and that moves her more than any love confession ever could. Days go by, and Lucia starts noticing little things, subtle gestures, shy attempts from Raphael to communicate using his hands. One day, he walks into the coffee shop, and instead of writing, he greets her using sign language. Awkward, but beautiful. Lucia is touched. No one had ever tried to learn her language before. It was always her adapting to the world. Now, for the first time, someone was reaching out to meet her halfway. Raphael tells her he's been watching videos, studying at home, learning slowly. He writes on a napkin, "I want to speak in your language." She beams. It's the most beautiful thing anyone's ever done for her. In silence, she takes his hand and writes in her notebook, "You're already saying so much." And for the first time, she truly believes love might exist for people like her too. They start meeting more often. They don't speak much, but they understand more than most couples who argue constantly. Raphael draws for her, Lucia writes for him, and between sketches and signs, a language of their own is born. The world outside is still loud and rushed, but between the two of them, time moves differently. Time whispers love, even in silence. Walking side by side, they share silences louder than words. Raphael has a light soul, almost childlike. He laughs easily, draws in the air, invents silly. He laughs easily, draws in the air, just to make her smile. Lucia, used to emotional stiffness, starts opening up. She finds herself laughing, truly laughing, something she hadn't done in a long time. With him, she doesn't have to explain. He feels her, he understands. At an artsy street fair, Raphael buys a little canvas that reads, "What's essential is invisible to the ears," a twist on the Little Prince's quote. He gives it to her, and she hugs it with teary eyes. Raphael tells her she made him see the world differently. Now even silence has color. Those words echo in her soul like a lullaby. For the first time, someone turned her silence into poetry. Lucia starts writing a new story, inspired by Raphael. But unlike the others, this isn't fiction, it's memory. Every gesture, every look, every shared smile turns into ink on the page. She's falling in love. And more than that, she's learning to accept herself. Raphael's love didn't cure her deafness, it cured her loneliness. What was once just connection is now admiration, tenderness, a desire to stay. Lucia walks to the cafe with a pounding heart. She carries a copy of a Clara Assil book with a handwritten note. For Raphael, with love, from the author you've already fallen for, even without knowing. She plans to give it to him today, but when she sees his pure smile, something inside her freezes. A memory rises of a past love who left after discovering her deafness. In her silence, she thinks, what if he leaves too? What if he only loves the writer, not the woman? The fear of losing something that hasn't even started mixes with the echoes of old heartbreaks. Lucette is torn between the desire to live this love freely and the instinct to protect herself. Raphael notices her distant gaze and signs. "Are you okay?" She nods, but inside ... She's falling apart. That night at home, Lucia remembers all the years she spent hiding behind a pen name. She never wanted fame. She just wanted to be read, to be understood. Clara Astil was her armor, her voice in the world. But now, with Raphael, hiding feels like a mistake. Even so, she tucks the book back into her bag. Not today. Maybe tomorrow. Maybe never. A few days later, Raphael walks through a book fair. He never knew Lucia's last name, so he's clueless that Clara Astil is even there. Until he sees, from afar, a woman who looks so much like her, same way of tying her hair, same shy smile, same delicate hands. He walks closer and sees the sign, "Book signing with Clara Astil." The world tilts. He freezes, unable to approach. From a distance, he watches her sign a book, her handwriting identical to the notes he's read 1,000 times at the cafe. It all clicks, the glances, the silences, the sketches that matched her stories. Raphael feels a storm of admiration and hurt. Why did she hide this from him? It feels like he loved a mirage, or worse, like she didn't trust him. He walks away without saying a word. Lucia spots him in the crowd and freezes. Her eyes search for him, but he's already gone. She closes the book in her hands, her throat tightening. Even without a voice, she screams inside. The truth came out. but not the way she planned. And now, could silence be what separates them? Raphael spends days trying to digest it all. He feels foolish for not noticing sooner, but he begins rereading Clara Azul's books with new eyes. He sees her, Lucia, in every line. It had always been her. And yet the pain remains. It wasn't the truth that hurt. It was the silence. The fact that she didn't trust him enough to share who she really was. He avoids the cafe, avoids places she might be, but he can't avoid her inside him. Every song, every book, every street corner reminds him of her. He tries to draw other faces, other stories, but the lines always return to that same smile. Raphael realizes his love wasn't for the author. It was for Lucia, her sweetness, her courage, her silent light. One night, he sits in his room with his sketchbook. Flipping through the pages, he finds the first drawing he made of her, a woman sitting alone, staring out a window, as if waiting for someone who might never come. He picks up his pencil and adds something new, a man beside her holding her hand. And for the first time since the distance, he smiles. Lucia knows she can't run anymore. She decides to write, not a text message, not a scribbled note, but a letter like in the old days. She writes slowly, pouring onto the page everything she felt, everything she feared. She apologizes, not for hiding who she was, but for hiding from herself. She tells him he was the first person to make her feel whole, even in silence. In the letter, she invites Raphael to the reading of her new work, an unpublished short story called The Voice That Dances in the Silence. It is about a woman who was afraid to love until a man learned her language and showed her that love doesn't need sound, only presence. The reading will take place in the same cafe where they first met. She ends the letter with a P.S. If you come, I promise, I'll never hide again. She delivers the letter to the front desk of his building. Then she heads to the event, heart pounding. She doesn't know if he'll come. She doesn't know if he forgave her. But for the first time in her life, she isn't writing to escape. She's writing to be seen. And that gesture by itself is already a victory. The cafe is full. The guests wait eagerly for Clara Azul's brand new reading. Lucia is on the small, improvised stage, sitting in front of the microphone, not to speak, but to deliver emotion through her eyes, gestures, and signs. An interpreter stands beside her, ready to translate every word of the story. She begins, and the room dives into a magical silence, as if all sound had been turned off so that the soul could listen. In the middle of the crowd, Raphael appears. He walks slowly, eyes misty, holding her letter. He's not there just as a reader, but as a man in love who chose to forgive and love more deeply. Lucia sees him and for a second hesitates, but then her eyes shine like someone seeing the sun after a storm. She continues the reading, but now it's as if she's reading only for him. At the end of the story, the audience gives a standing ovation, but Lucia looks only at Raphael. He walks up to her and, without saying a word, raises his hands and signs, "You are my favorite voice." The silence that once separated them is now a bridge. She smiles, walks toward him, and holds his hand. And there, in front of everyone, with a calm and meaningful kiss, they seal a love that never needed words, only truth. Months later, the scene has changed. The cafe now has a wall dedicated to deaf art, with Raphael's drawings and excerpts from Lucia's books. They run workshops together, where readers learn to communicate in sign language and feel the power of silence. The children love it. The adults leave in tears. It became more than just a cultural space. It became a meeting point for souls seeking genuine connection. In their personal life, they live like two artists who inspire each other every day. Raphael became fluent in sign language. Lucia lost the fear of being seen. They still write letters to each other, even while sharing the same home, as a ritual of love. Each note is a new promise. Each stroke of the pen a way to say, I see you. And on Sundays, while having breakfast holding hands, they write together. Stories about unlikely loves, silent encounters, and hearts that hear what the world ignores. They understood, after all, that love isn't about hearing, it's about perceiving. And that kind of love, no one can ever take away from them. True love doesn't need to shout to be heard. Sometimes it whispers in gestures and glances and presences that touch deeper than any word. Lucia and Raphael teach us that the courage to be who we are is the greatest gift we can give someone and ourselves. Because when we allow ourselves to be seen, even in fear, love finds its way. And it comes not to fix what's missing, but to celebrate all that is already beautiful in us. On a rainy night, the camera shows Raphael in his studio, drawing under the warm light of a lamp. He finishes an illustration of a woman looking up at the sky. On the last page, he writes, "This book is for those who love without needing sound, and for her, who taught me to listen with my heart." He closes the book gently and walks into the living room, where Lucia is asleep on the couch, a manuscript on her lap. He covers her with a blanket, kisses her forehead, and whispers with his fingers, "Thank you for not giving up on me." The camera slowly pulls away, showing their reflection in the window. Outside, the city glows silently, as if honoring the love they built.